Okay. Welcome to those watching live on YouTube now or watching the recording afterwards. We are about to kick off our first volunteer gathering of 2024. So we'll turn it over to our Executive Director, Allison Bruzoff.
All right, thanks, Alana. And I know it's the 16th of January, but Happy New Year to everybody. And here's looking to a fantastic 2024. Got quite a bit going on this year. As I think most of you know, school tours are back because we did the pilot program at the end of 2023. And this month we're kind of in the tweaking period to figure out what went well, what might need to be changed. I know docent training is starting later on this week for more docents, so hopefully those that haven't done it so far will join in. But very exciting that we've got school tours back. The other big programming thing that we have going on is we will now in 2024 be developing our STEAM curriculum. And so that'll be centered around the Looking Back to Advance Forward project, which is a stormwater retention and reuse project. So we'll be talking about environmental justice, climate change, and water conservation. And that program will be geared towards 8th and 11th grades. And then after we get those going to 5th grade. Also, coming back this year, summer camps. So Alana is already working on the summer camp promotion. So that will be coming out very soon. So we're looking at doing our weeks of the grade school summer camps and then our teen summer camps. So that is also super exciting. As well as we have a new exhibit opening at the end of June, which is on Black Cowboys. So stay tuned to be seeing more on that. We're also developing some different programming around that exhibit. But right now, just started with January 6th, is we do have 5 artist workshops around the then and now exhibit that's currently up in the visitor center. So we just had our first artist workshop, and they are now February through May, the first Saturday of each month. They're only $15, and they are a great way to get to know our artists in the exhibit and how they feel that art and photography captures history. So those are in play. So we hope you guys can come to that. I'm looking at other programming happening in 2024, also doing a little bit of reorganization. So we'll be potentially hiring some new positions as we move into the new year. So we'll have more for everyone on that. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We've got a lot going on. We're very excited about everything we have going on. And we're super excited about our volunteer gatherings. I know we're all looking forward to April, right, which is our Volunteer Appreciation Month. So we'll have more on that. So we've got a lot going on, but I don't want to take the stage here. This is about Shari and John and their presentation. So with that, I welcome everyone to the new year. 2024 is going to be a successful year, just as 2023 was. So thank you all for making the time to be here. So Laura, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thank you, Allison. So I am super excited that I have these 2 volunteers that had this big curiosity to figure out how the Adobe has changed over the years. And they were asking if there's somebody that could do that presentation. And they decided that it would be them, that they would be willing to do the research and get this presentation together. And they've done a fantastic job. I had the privilege of seeing it earlier today, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. And so I am going to turn it over to Shari Faris, who is a house docent, and she is on the volunteer council representing the curatorial volunteers. She's going to start off, and then it's going to be followed by John Mrazik, who is the volunteer council representing all of the docents. correct? Right? You're for docents, right, John? And I want to let you know that John is one of the top tour givers at the rancho. There's a few people that give more tours than John, but just a couple, and he really enjoys showing people the house and sharing the history, and now he has a lot more depth to that. So, and now a lot of the rest of you will also be able to add the depth of knowledge that they're going to share with you. So, thank you so much, Shari and John, and take it away.
Thank you, Laura. So I'm going to start off, and let me just get my screen share going so I can make sure that that's all working properly. Okay. 1 second. Okay, is that working for everyone? Okay, I see Laura nodding her head. Yay. Okay, so thank you. Yes, I'm Shari. I'm a house docent, and I'm really excited to be here tonight because, as Laura said, John and I were talking about this topic, and we're really interested in it. So my portion is sharing some photographs from the rancho's collections to help us see how the historic adobe changed over time, and also to look at a few of the other structures that were served as a place for home near the historic adobe. I called it a place for home because I just felt like the rancho has been a place of home for so many, and that these photographs can help tell that story. So that's sort of what we'll be looking at. And John will focus on the layout of the specific rooms. And before we got started, I just wanted to put our land acknowledgement up in case I thought it was especially important here when we're looking at home because of the significance of the land serving as a place for home for the Tongva and the Gabrielino people, who were the past, present, and future caretakers of the Los Angeles Basin and the Southern Channel Islands, and that we honor and extend our respects to the many indigenous people who call these lands home. And we'll look at their structures that served as their home in just a minute. But I wanted to put this photograph up because I felt like it really helped tell the story of the history of the rancho. And this is from a photograph taken in the 20s, as you can see, during the tenant period of the historic adobe. But it was actually a Christmas card that was sent in 1929, according to the notes in our collection, by the Long Beach City Assessor's Office, which I found fascinating. And there's handwriting on the card that says the Los Cerritos Ranch House, Hacienda of Don Juan Temple and Mr. Jotham Bixby. And I just really felt like it kind of set the scene for telling the rancho story, and it covers the tenant period in the photograph, but then it's got this writing referencing the Hacienda of Don Juan Temple and then the sheep ranching period for Jotham Bixby. So I just thought it was a nice place to start. But the first structures to look at tonight are the homes that served as the living space for the Tongva. You can see them in this painting, although it's not as sharp as I would like, but it's by Mary Leighton Thomas, showing some of the living structures that Tongva made from the materials they found in their environment. That he or she, you can see that they are made with wood to make the frame, and then surrounded by grasses woven together to create a covering. Those would be materials they found in their natural environment, usually near a water source. And in this case, many of these structures were found near the rancho. Later on in the 1850s, they were identified as part of a property survey. And then also in the 1870s, some still standing close to the historic adobe, Sarah Bixby Smith writes, in adobe days. So I thought this was a good place to start, just so that we could get a sense of the different types of places that served as home on the rancho and near the historic adobe. And the next one is this photograph of what is called the Kota adobe. So this, as you can see, is a very simple 2-room adobe, single story. It actually serves as the model for the visitor center. It was probably built around 1835. The photograph is actually from 1918, which I find fascinating to think that it stood for such a long time, being made from Adobe. It's sometimes referred to as the Flea House, according to references in Adobe days. And this was located, the structure, a little bit west of the current Adobe. And as I said, very simple, but common for an Adobe structure of the time, with the 2 rooms and a single story. And then we can contrast that with John Temple's Adobe, a much grander Adobe. So this is from a drawing depicting what the Adobe would have looked like in 1844 when it was built. And you can see the general outline, the structure that's still basically in place today. And John will speak a little bit more about that. But some of the differences that you can see, and he'll also speak a little about the architectural style, which is Monterey Colonial. But we can see the original flat roof in the main part of the 2-story home, and then the flat roofs on the work wings, and then of course the wall and gate enclosing the courtyard. And as I said, that general footprint is still in place. And as many of the house docents sometimes share, this was a pretty grand style home. But John Temple was a prosperous businessman, so he could afford to build such a grand style home, but made from Adobe, the common building material of California at the time, and made by the indigenous people, the Tongva, who helped build it. So the next view of the historic Adobe serving as a place for home is, we have some wonderful photographs from 1872 taken by a man named William Godfrey, who came out to the rancho, and it really helps us see what life was like at the time, what the Adobe looked like. There's many photographs with family members in the photos. And this was the sheep branching era, when this was a family home to Jotham and Margaret and the family, and all their extended family, the Bixbys and the Hathaways often coming to stay there. We now see the pitched roof in the main portion of the house, shingled pitched roof, probably a big improvement over the flat roof as far as protecting the Adobe and also keeping leaks out. And we see a barn on our left. That structure has been added. The work wings, you can see the roofs are still flat in 1872. But that will change. We'll see that in a minute. This is a view of the backyard at the same time period, 1872. We can see the garden here. We can see that shingled roof. We can also see some of the trees from the Temple era and some of the family members here. It's a little grainy, but here, and then the water tank on the right. And then here in the photograph from 1890, which is what we start to call the tenant era, after the Bixbys moved out in 1881, we can see pitched roof finally added to the work wings. But we can also start to see a little bit of deterioration to the Adobe material. And as many of us share with visitors, Adobe does require a lot of upkeep, and it wears away with weather and time. And so we can start to see that here in this 1890 photograph. At this time, tenants were living in the rancho in the historic Adobe. Some of those, for a while after the Bixbys moved out, were former people who had worked there, possibly Aying and Miguel Murillo, who had worked for Jotham Bixby, but also for John Temple. So it was home to some workers who had worked at the rancho, but then it was also home to people who worked at some of the surrounding farms and dairies. The land was changing around the rancho, and there were more farms and dairies, so some of those workers lived there as well. And before I share a few more photos from the tenant period, I just wanted to put this one up because this is another one of those that I feel really captures the moment. This is from 1924, so later in the tenant period when the Coronados and the Lieras lived there at the rancho. But this was from a story in the Los Angeles Times. They came out to the rancho in 1924 and they took several photos. And it was a story on taking a motor trip to Long Beach. And the notes in our collection say that the young girl on the right is possibly Eleanor Coronado, Concepcion's sister. And I just thought this was so, I don't know, perfect for capturing a moment of young children. They're at home in the courtyard, you know, maybe out playing. I don't know. For me, it's really interesting, and I would like to track down this Los Angeles Times story. I don't have it yet, but I'm going to look for it. But some of the other photos in our collection from this LA Times article show other children holding hands, standing in front of the Adobe. So I think it's very interesting. But backing up a little in the tenant years in the 1890s, this is a photograph showing the courtyard. You can see a little bit of the deterioration on the walls and around the windows. But at this time, the adobe was being used as a dairy for a time by a man named William Boyle. He used it as the headquarters for a dairy operation, and some of his workers may have lived here. And we can see that it's possible that there were some structural changes made here to the south work wing. It looks to me like some of the doorways have been enlarged, but sometimes the perspective is a little odd too. So I'm not totally sure, but that some of the changes to the south wing could have been made to accommodate dairy cows, to make stalls for dairy cows. And then here's the same time frame, about 1896 view for the backyard, just kind of showing what the adobe looked like then. At that time, a little bit later, Miguel Murillo still living there in the north end of the house, and other families that worked at some of the nearby ranches more towards the 1900s were living at the south end upstairs. And now another favorite photo. This is from the 20s. Here we see what the adobe looked like when the Coronados and the Vieras lived there. And we see this staircase that Manuel Vieira built. Very practical, I think, helping the family get from the upstairs to down where the garden is. They're growing crops that they can use, vegetables, that kind of thing. There's a hen house, hens, there's pigs. I love that we can see the pigs in this photograph. So that gives us an idea of what life was like at the rancho then in the 1920s. And then finally, this is a photo from 1930. So now the tenants have moved out, and Llewellyn Bixby, Jotham's nephew, Llewellyn Bixby the second or senior, decides to purchase the house and remodel it, thankfully, so that it's still standing today for us. But this is a photograph of his wife and his daughter from July 1930, standing there on the veranda. And I like to imagine that they're talking about the wonderful improvements that are coming and how exciting it will be to move into this restored adobe as their family home. That's what I imagine, but who knows? But one thing I wanted to share that I found really interesting is that Jotham had contemplated remodeling the adobe and did not do that, but there was a quote from him in the Long Beach Press Telegram in 1913 about what his goal was if he did restore it, and that was to restore it as much as possible to the style and atmosphere of the past. And I really liked that because I feel like we see that today when we walk through the historic adobe. We see that style and atmosphere of the past that was preserved. And in 1930, when it was remodeled, even though the modern conveniences were added, I feel like Llewellyn may have shared that same goal of keeping the style and atmosphere of the past, because we'll see that in a little bit with some of the other slides. But he worked with an architect named Kenneth Ling, who he had worked with on other projects before, and so perhaps they both shared that same vision. Here's a photograph showing from October 1930, showing some of the work that is being done. It seems to me a very large undertaking. The red tile roofs were added. The architectural style now is called Mission Revival or Spanish Revival, a little different from the Monterey Colonial. And we see that with the red tile roofs and some other things that I'll point out in the next slide. But of course, they added modern conveniences that you would want in your family home. And one of those were fireplaces. You can see the fireplace being built here off the living room. Another fireplace was built here in the library. And so we can see the work being started here in October 1930. Here's a photograph I also really like, because I just feel like we get to see really what's happening of the courtyard and the work that's being done, the trenches that are being dug in the courtyard to help add the electricity, the plumbing, the heating, all of those things were added to make it a more comfortable family home. Also, as far as architectural style, we can see how the roof line was extended. So we have these covered walkways. That's often part of the mission revival style. And so is having the courtyard and the kind of whitewashed adobe walls. The walls were reinforced with kind of a cement material to make them stronger, but they were also reinforced internally to the wall, thankfully, because it helped the adobe withstand the 1933 Long Beach earthquake. Also, when they remodeled, walls were knocked down and new rooms and spaces created, and all these workrooms became other rooms for a family home. And here we see a photo from 1931. The work is almost done. The family moved in March of 1931. So they're finishing up here. But as I mentioned, that quote from Jotham about restoring the style and atmosphere of the past, some of those details that they kept that we can still see when we're taking people through the rancho are the bars on the windows. There's the roof beams in the sun porch that stick out that you can still see. The vents in the blacksmith shop that were left in place even after that became, the personal living space for Llewellyn Bixby Jr. So just some of those details that they kept. And also many of the fixtures were handmade and I think sort of match the style of that mission revival style. And then here's a photograph showing the work is almost done. This is from the backyard. And so here we can see the wall that was added to enclose the garden. We can see the early beginnings of the beautiful garden that we have today that's all filled out with often with many native plants. Ralph Cornell, the very well-known landscape architect who worked on this with Llewellyn, I think they both very much appreciated native plants. And so those are part of the garden, and also preserving John Temple's trees and the Bixby's trees wherever possible. So we have landscaping from the remodel and walls, and then the family moving in March of 1931. And I like to think that this is my last slide, that even though the rancho today is not a physical home to a family, it's obviously it's a home to our animal friends and lots of wildlife, but I feel like it's a home that visitors and those of us who come and share it can experience what home was like long ago through many different time periods. So we can still experience that even though it's not serving as a physical place for home today. So that's what I wanted to share all the different photographs from the different time periods. And I will turn it over to John to expand on how the structure was, what it looked like, and the different changes. And of course, I need to obviously get out of my share. Okay.
Let me pull mine out. Oh, please tell me I didn't lose it. There we go. Okay, I called mine the Rancho Through the Ages, primarily because I'm looking from 1844 and until the 1930s renovation. We kind of all know the footprint of the house today. And after reviewing almost 300 pages of letters and documents, one of the things I was struck by is, except for the northern work wing, the house's footprint has really stayed almost the same as it did from back when the house was built. The house was originally built in the Monterey colonial style of architecture. The colonial style of architecture was developed by a gentleman by the name of Thomas O. Larkin, who originally was from New England. He moved from there to Charleston, South Carolina, Then he moved to New Orleans, and then he moved to Monterey. And so his style of architecture really shows a number of different characteristics. Firstly, from a New England standpoint, the house itself has two separate wings, along with a central hall. The two wings are very New England in that in the large townhomes that the wealthy people lived in New England normally had two separate wings. Why did they do that? Well, it was easy to close off one wing during the wintertime so they didn't have to heat it. So because it would get very expensive and very difficult. Also, in the Adobe house, the second floor where the upper level of the living room is today was a ballroom, which is a very New England thing to do. If you go back there and see a lot of the large townhomes, they did have a ballroom on the second floor. If you go to the Masonic temples in New England, you'll see that their meeting rooms and their basically temple is on the second floor. Also, it's very symmetrical. The original Adobe house, if you looked at the pictures that Shari was sharing, starting with the southernmost end, there was a door, then a window, a door, a window, and a door. On the first floor was a window, a door, a window, a door, a window, a door, and a window. So that was a very important part of Monterey colonial architecture. The New England also on the antebellum influence and the French influence was the wraparound veranda, which you'll see in a lot of the old plantation homes, and the Spanish influence, which was the house was built out of adobe bricks. On the left side, you'll see a drawing of Temple's Mercantile in Los Angeles. And so you see he must have really enjoyed the Monterey colonial style of architecture because his store was the same thing. We'll go into the Temple era, the first floor. Starting on the left, which is the north side, there was always a utility room on the far left on the other side of the dining room. The entrance into the dining room from there is where are the drapes hang today, and the utility room is now the kitchen. The dining room, which had its entrance from out on the veranda, has always been used as a dining room, but it was about a third, it was about 2/3 the size it is today. In the renovation, they expanded that and took away space from what would have been the guest room, which is now where the 1930s bathroom is, as well as all the storage. And then here is underneath here is where there's storage under the stairs. This would be the central hall. And the guest bedroom's entrance was out of the central hall. The parlor's entrance was from the central hall. And then there was a guest bedroom whose entrance was from out on the veranda. We look at the second floor. There was a bedroom, which had its entrance from out on the veranda. There was another bedroom whose entrance was from the central hall, and then the ballroom, whose entrance was from the central hall. Now, understand that these drawings are rather crude because I did not take shop or drafting in high school. I took home ec instead. Now, if we go to the Jotham Bixby era, again, starting with the north wing, which is, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of looking at it from the courtyard, they still had the utility room, again, the kitchen today. Then the dining room, they turned that second bedroom into the guest room. Again, the entrance from the central hall. They still had the parlor, a guest bedroom, and then they built a wood structure on the exterior on the wraparound veranda that turned into the Reverend Hathaway's bedroom, Margaret's father. During the Bixby era, the top rooms, again, we had Francine's, one of the daughters' bedrooms, whose entrance was from the veranda. Then we had Martha's bedroom, which was entered from the central hall. Jotham and Margaret's bedroom was what was the ballroom, and they actually built closets along this wall right here. And again, their bedroom was from here. And then we had Harry and George's bedroom, which was another wood frame structure that was built onto the wraparound veranda. There was windows here and a window here. And so it was from either Jotham and Margaret's bedroom or Harry and George's bedrooms that Sarah and Harry used to go out onto the flat roof of the work wing and dig out tar balls and throw them at people. Also, it was one of these two bedrooms that probably the great conflagration in Sarah's version of the Easy Bake Oven took place. Here you can see the wood frame structures that were Reverend Hathaway's bedroom and then Harry and George's bedroom. And I added this is from the tenant period. You can also, I found it interesting that this is the only photograph I've seen of the two-room or the two-door privy, which is just outside of where the trellis is today, or the arbor. And the reason Margaret wanted to leave and go up to Los Angeles, because she got tired of using the privy. During the tenant era, again, the footprint has remained virtually unchanged, except the utility room is now a kitchen. The dining room is still the same. The guest bedroom was vacant. And then Manuel Lara's bedroom was where the parlor is. The dining room is where the other guest bedroom is. And then what used to be Reverend Hathaway's bedroom was vacant. On the second floor, we had the children's bedroom, the Coronado parents' bedroom, and then the Liera parents' bedroom, which again had the closets over here. I did find it interesting that given the fact that Manuel and Concepcion were smitten with each other, they kind of had their bedrooms as far away from each other as possible. Now, if we look at the south work wing, there were some changes here. What is now the office and part of this storeroom, this was Jotham's office. It was probably Temple's office as well. This was, right next to it was a storeroom and then the blacksmith shop. This area here is now what would have been, actually this area here is where the sitting room is for Llewellyn Jr.'s. And right around here is where that wall is for his bedroom. Next to the blacksmith shop, where the food storage room is today, was a storeroom. And then the middle closet section of the that guest suite was another storeroom. And then what is now the furniture storeroom was also a storeroom. The last three of the storerooms, these two storerooms did not have exterior doors. These were all pass-throughs from this storeroom. And then we had the foreman room, which is today still the foreman's room. And finally, the north work wing, which is exactly probably the biggest change of all of them through the renovations. Right next door to the main house was the kitchen, where Ah Ying and Ah Fan cooked the meals for everybody, as well as that's where their sleeping area was. Next to the kitchen was originally a carriage shed, but turned into the men's dining hall, the mess hall. There was a storeroom next to it and the laundry. Notice that all of these had doors leading to the outside, but now they closed all of that in during the renovations and made a hallway into this area here. Next to that storeroom was where the laundry room was originally. And then next to that, which is now part of the garage, was where the ranch hand's bedroom or bunk room was. And then next to that, also part of the garage today, was a passageway that went through all the way to where the barn was. And then next to that was the milk room. I like to call it a creamery because that's where John Bixby made butter and cheese and did his dairying operations. So you can see that for the most part, the actual footprint of the house never really changed that much. It is still very much like it was back then, except there were a lot of different, there were changes. Did I do? There we go. There were changes to the north wing primarily. They moved a couple of walls around. You know, they took out the floor of the ballroom and then the walls between the parlor and the guest bedroom. But other than that, the structure itself is really the same. So it was exciting to do that. One other quick thing is, again, Miguel Varillo wrote and told stories about there being a set of ghost stairs going from the kitchen down into a dungeon between the carriage shed / men's dining room. He liked to tell the story that it was more like a dungeon and that there were chains in the walls, but there is absolutely no record of them finding that during any of the renovations. So I have a feeling that Uncle Mike was telling us a bunch of tall tales. And that's really the way the architecture ended up. So that's the end of mine. And I'm going to stop the share. And that's it.
Thank you both very much. That was very informative. A little walk through the history of how all the different architecture has changed. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and type them into the chat. I do want to make one note. You said Francina was a daughter. That was Aunt Francina, who was, right. Who was? You're on mute, John.
Unmute. I was looking into the genealogy of the Bixbys too, and it looked like there was a Franny that was a daughter as well.
Well, there was Fanny.
Fanny.
Yeah, that's Aunt Francina's bedroom. Joe Thumb's sister that never married.
Okay.
That stayed with them for a lot of time. So thank you both very much. We're going to now move into the check-in portion of our meeting. So we're now going to promote you to be able to share your screen and to be able to turn on and off your mic. And
Laura, we did have some questions. Did you want to?
Okay.
There were some questions in the Q&A.
There we go.
Will these presentations be shareable? Like Shari and John, would you be comfortable sharing your PowerPoints with people? Because I think
Sure.
some trouble seeing some of the details in the photos. So to be able to kind of go back and look at them more closely, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And then we also had a
I'm
question.
so sorry. I saw that. I'm sorry to interrupt. I saw that question just now. I'm so sorry if it wasn't as clear. But yes, so I'd be happy to share that or try to enlarge them somehow.
Yeah, I would be too as well.
Great. And then another question was the Reverend Hathaway's bedroom torn down?
It was torn down during the renovations in 1930s. Again, that was, Harry and George's bedroom, and it is where the wraparound is today. And so they had closed that in to make Harry and George's bedroom, as well as the wraparound on the first floor to make Reverend Hathaway's bedroom.
Yes, and I'm sure many of the tenants would have used those spaces before they were torn down. Like, for instance, Harry and George's bedroom was where the Lieras had their kitchen.
Yes. No, actually, Reverend Hathaway's bedroom on the first floor is where the Lieras had their kitchen.
Well, when they lived on the second floor, they had the kitchen. Maybe before, when the whole family lived there, they had one downstairs.
Yes.
Yes. what's this? Shari showed an exterior picture of the Bixby era that seems to have some water coming out. Do you know anything about that? Do you know which picture she's talking about?
Water coming out? No.
I think that's from the exterior of the courtyard. And that could have just been the fact that it rained or something, because there was never any really water that was there. The water was down the hill where the country club is today.
But I will go back and look at the photos. I don't know which one that is, so I'm having trouble imagining what that looks like.
I think I'm going to start promoting people now, so you can, if they have more questions, we can just ask them. So it may seem like you're leaving, but hopefully you will come back forward and you'll be able to share your video. Oh, great. Do we have any? Are you having any luck promoting anybody?
I don't
Can't come on.
know.
You cannot start your video because the
Oh,
host.
there's Marcia made it. Okay.
Well, I didn't get my picture on because it says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it. And I pushed OK, so, but then I have to log in with Google or something, and I can't do that.
I think some people might just be electing to stay as in the chat. We do have some.
Yeah, some of them are promoting.
Mhm.
Let me do them each more one time and then we'll.
Okay.
Oops. We can. Oh, the host is disabled.
Okay, I guess the rest. Line to promote. Oh, okay. Oh, some people are declining. All right.
No,
Yeah. And no one can turn on their video.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
I
Yes.
can hear you, but okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
I don't care if I video. I just wanted to. I tried to put a chat question to ask if on the 1881 picture, the lady that's walking into the rancho, if anybody knows who that is. I've been trying to find that for years, so I thought Shari might have found it in something. So
I did not see any note. They have notes, you know, by the photos sometimes with more info. I didn't see anything in the book because I agree. I would love to know more about that.
Okay, if you find it, let me know because I own that. I own that picture. I bid on it when we had the rancho tear down the.
Oh my goodness!
I have it in my house, and everybody asked me if it's Fanny, and I said not at that year, but maybe the year is wrong. But if you find it in any newspapers, I've been looking for a long time.
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
Alana, do you know, is there something that I can change so that they can start their videos?
Yes. It's usually, I'm trying to remember where it is. It's usually beneath the participants window. There's like a 3 dots that you can click to open a drop down. And one of them has to do with panelist videos, or sometimes in the settings of the meeting itself.
Oh, let's see. Well, actually,
I think you have to do it before you come on.
Change role, assign, allow, put on hold, change. I'll just make everybody a co-host.
Good idea.
Once you're a co-host, you will be able to turn on your video.
Because I didn't see any choice for that other to anything about allowing video.
I'm sorry, while you're fiddling with that, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So Sherry, I found the picture. I was taking screenshots of all your stuff.
Oh,
You guys both
wonderful.
did a great job, by the way. It was really cool. I love the blueprints. I love some of the candid shots you got, Sherry. They were great.
Thank you. Yeah.
So the picture I'm looking at is
Mhm.
your 1872 picture.
Okay.
And I think we've all seen it.
Yeah.
It's got the horse in front, but I just noticed, I don't know, maybe it's the clarity of your picture, or I don't know what, but there's the barn is in there. So I thought that's
Yeah.
cool. I wanted to ask about, is that the model of the barn that we're planning to build in the future to make it look like that?
Sort of.
I think like
it's going to
loosely
be big and
inspired.
Loosely
bossy.
inspired, like the visitor center is loosely inspired, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we're not, I don't believe the intention is to try to make it exactly the dimensions and the exact look of it. But since there was a barn on site and we will need to construct another building to house offices and archives and things to be able to open up the entire house for interpretation, we want to kind of keep the aesthetic of it similar to what the historic building looked like.
That makes
I don't
sense.
think we're doing it like, plank by plank, trying to make it look exactly the same.
That's cool. That's gonna look great. That's the same photo, Sherry, where I can see reflection of water. And maybe John's right. It's not like a body of water. It almost looks like a drainage ditch that maybe is coming out from, it looks like between the barn
Oh,
and the wing, it looks like there was maybe a pen for animals. Maybe that's like a drainage ditch or something.
oh, in the backyard?
No, I'm looking at, it's the front side. You can see the main gate coming
Do you
in.
do you want me to pull it up, or is that
Yeah,
just
can you pull it up? Because then
okay?
it'll
Let
make
me
it
see real
easier
quick.
than me explaining it verbally.
While
Thank-
you're pulling that up, we did get some comments from our YouTube viewers as well, just giving their congratulations to Sherry and John for a great presentation.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Thank you.
Okay, it is.
How many people did we have on YouTube? Sandra Mora?
Number seven, next one, yeah.
I think we had 4 or 5 at the peak.
Oh, great.
Sorry, you guys. Yeah. I lost it. Maybe it was not meant to be.
Maybe not.
Somehow it went to the end when I was trying to navigate. We'll just go backwards one at a time. This one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that might be just like an artifact in the photo.
Yeah, this is damaged.
Yeah.
Where it's white.
Yeah, that's
Right
Yeah,
there.
I don't think.
Oh,
There's probably a better photo. Like there's several, we could get a better version of this one.
it looks like water reflection, but it's a damage to the photo.
I think
Yes, where it's white, that's,
Oh,
yeah.
right.
And I'm sorry these aren't larger.
As long as you're on that photo, you see that
Yeah.
structure that looks like where the current wisteria arbor is.
Oh, right here?
Yeah, what is that?
I know. I don't know. Do you know, John? That's
where are we talking
hard to
about?
see. It's to the left of the work wing here.
Well, John Temple did have an arbor going off at the end of the veranda.
That's big.
So
That's the grape arbor, right?
Yeah.
That's the grape arbor, I think.
Right. Yeah, that's probably the grape arbor. Although it does kind of look sort of more built up there.
It almost looks like an aqueduct, but I doubt it was.
No, I don't think so, but yeah.
And then I've seen that picture of the sheep going through like that run, like where they ran them through a bath. Do we know what that was?
That was further out, almost by the country club.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that would have been further outside of the backyard, we think.
I'm sure on that one.
The people look so little. Do we look that little?
Yeah, we do. The fence
Yep.
is actually that tall.
No, you're right. It looks like they're standing close to the fence, but they're shorter than the fence. It's kind of, yeah, I don't know.
Well, if you stand next to the fence, not up on the, where the flagstone stairs are now,
Hmm.
that fence is pretty tall.
Hmm.
Of course,
Yep.
I'm pretty short.
Any more questions, or should we move into our check-in if people want to?
Well, my last question was, I think I've asked before, but the brick fence that goes all the way around, does anyone know where those bricks came from? Or we don't
They
know?
were the bricks, the fence, the wall that we have now.
Yeah, that goes all the way around, the big bricks.
They were custom made during the remodel to.
Here or where?
Oh, yeah, I don't know who he had make them. No,
Like
they
local-
didn't.
You think it was local, like someone locally made them, or they made them on site, or?
I always just assumed that it was some brick maker that they had them make custom bricks the size to echo the size of the mass of the Adobe bricks in the house.
Because they do look
Um,
fired.
Yeah.
The
Yes, they
bricks
are
look
fine.
fired, which they wouldn't have done with Adobe bricks because they would have burned up.
Yeah, I don't know that we know who they had made them. There might be that in some receipts, but I don't know. Have you ever heard anything about that, Alana?
I'm trying to remember. I remember they were specially made to be the dimensions of the Adobe bricks so that there would be that parallel between the original building and the new wall. And they are fired bricks. But if we learned where they were made, I do not recall off the top of my head. But it's a good question.
I almost think Marie has said they don't know, like they weren't able to find record. I feel like I've heard that before, that they don't know where they were made or who made them.
Yeah.
Because when
And
they tried to replace
she would know if we know.
Yeah.
Do we have the
Yeah.
original construction contract?
I don't think so. I think that there are a few receipts that I've seen at different times, but I think overall they don't have a lot of the contracts and stuff. They do have the architectural drawings and plans.
No, but the construction contracts would have had whoever made the bricks.
Right. Yeah.
But in that
Yeah.
time period, there was a lot of people that were making bricks, and a lot of places were made with the bricks, and they're fired, and they've got a lot of reenactments of how you break bricks and how you burn them and all that stuff. So I'm sure it wouldn't be that hard to figure out all the ones that were around and then figure out somehow. But there's that book that Steve has of receipts for different things earlier that he always used to show, but I never asked about the bricks. It's probably somewhere, probably right be smacking our face, and we have it and we don't even know. So who's the one that asked that question?
Laura Breen asked that question.
Okay, so if I find out, I'll let you know, because I'm interested in that now that you said that.
Oh, thanks.
I got to ask a bunch of historian people, but most people always give me stuff for Alamitos and Dominguez, but nothing for Cerritos.
Laura, I'm going to have to jump off. I have another meeting I have to attend for my son.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, John.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure. Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night, John. Well, I did want him really quickly before he went to say.
Okay, I can stay a minute.
I want to know.
Tell us the story that you just told us this morning when I mentioned my Martin Luther King Day happening.
I was actually at the I Have a Dream speech.
Cool.
My father was a Master Chief Petty Officer stationed at the Pentagon, and my father admired Martin Luther King Jr. very much, so he knew that he was going to speak that day at the Lincoln Memorial on the Mall, and he brought me. And so I still have a recollection of just how many people were there, and I have a recollection of hearing Martin Luther King Jr. speak. And there were so many people there that we decided not to go back to Alexandria, which we were living at. And we went back to his office in the Pentagon and stayed there for 2 or 3 hours until the traffic died down. But it was, I still recall it. It was an incredible experience for me, and I'm glad I did.
Very lucky.
The next time answer why you took homemaking. I was curious about that.
Oh, because I had no interest in shop. And
Oh, okay.
when my first home ec class, I figured out very early on there were food and girls.
So it was a co-ed class, so you must have been after 1960.
Well, I was the only boy, and then I did take sewing. So I mean,
At the time you
because
had
my
to make
mom decided that very early on that if I wanted clothes, I would learn how to do my own laundry, and I would learn how to fix my own stuff. So I got to be a pretty good seamster.
And was that local high school, like around here, or
That was
far away?
Huntington Beach High School.
Oh, okay, okay, thanks.
So, but yeah, it's why I love to cook today. And it's a good thing because I'm good at it and I love it. And my wife hates to cook and she's just awful.
All right, works out well. All right.
All right, I'm going to
Thank
jump
you
on my
again,
next
Todd.
meeting. Thank you so
Okay.
much, everybody. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, John.
Good night now.
So we decided to do a little bit different. Instead of having a specific prompt and passing it off and saying that you have to respond, because we think maybe people are dropping off because they don't want to be forced to respond, that we'll just say, do you have something that's happened in the last several weeks or whatever that happened at the rancho or in your life or whatever that you'd like to share? And we'll just leave it at that. And if anybody wants to share, we're happy that you will. And if you don't want to share, then we'll be done and we can all go eat dinner. So I wanted to share that I thought it was just an incredible, wonderful serendipity yesterday as I was on a walk, getting my steps in before it got dark. And I was walking past the expo center and there was a few people gathering around the entrance. So I was, like pausing to see what was going on. And a woman comes out and she's like, I'm going to have a tour of the Martin Luther King exhibit now, if anybody would like to come in. And I went in and this woman did this great tour of the history of Martin Luther King. And they have an exhibit there, which I've never seen it open before, that the African American part of it. And so it was great to see that. So I just thought that was really lucky thing to happen on Martin Luther King Day for me. So anybody else have something they would like to share? Nancy is reaching for the mute.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Well, since you talked about going someplace else, the Zadakas and Floyd and I went a couple of weeks ago to the printing museum and saw Megan and had a tour of her new museum. And it was really, really, really interesting. And so I suggest that you go visit Megan at her museum. She's usually there on Saturday. That's when it's open for tours. And we had a really fascinating tour. So just thought I'd give a plug to Megan and her museum.
Excellent. Did you see Ben Franklin?
No, actually he's this Saturday, but we're giving tours at the rancho this Saturday, so we couldn't do that. But he is going to be they're doing this special thing on Ben Franklin, and it looks like it would be very interesting. It's $10 admission if you're a senior. I think it's 12 if you're not a senior. And they have lots of interesting printing presses, and the tour guides are very knowledgeable. So, and it was good to see Megan again.
I bet. Yes. Yeah, I want to go, but you guys know where I'll be.
Yeah, but you were.
Anybody else? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And I recorded hours for you. And I hope to see you around the rancho. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Laura, I don't know if